I got to play the final build of My Hero Academia All's Justice. I had the full game for about 3 hours thanks to Bandai Namco inviting me to this preview event. Now, the gameplay session was a little bit guided. They wanted to make sure I saw a few of the different game modes and didn't just sit in the lab for the full 3 hours. So today, I get to show you a little bit of story mode, the open world mode called Team Up Mission, Hero's Diary, and a little bit of versus CPU matches. Today's video is just a taste, however, as I'll be going in depth on each one of these game modes throughout this entire week. So if you don't want to miss those videos, make sure you're subscribed. And you know I had to give a little extra love to those who support the channel directly by hitting that join button. YouTube members are going to get early access to every video I post this week, so if you want to see it first, for less than $1, you get all of this before anyone else. But it all starts in the tutorial where the game takes you through all of the controls and the basics. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I want to highlight a couple of things that immediately felt different as I was clearing every tutorial objective. First of all, counterattacks have a different input. It's now block plus quirk 1. It will take some time to adjust to this for sure if you're coming from the previous games. But the biggest change I felt was that there's no double jump anymore. Instead, if you tap double jump, you get this quick descent. You can still air dodge, air dash, there are still plenty of air actions, but no more double jump. And with a fast descent, I would argue movement is actually a lot faster than before. But that was the first thing, movement-wise, that I felt like I needed to get used to. There's obviously the whole rising and tag system, which are also brand new to this game, and I'll definitely talk about my impressions of those systems in depth, but since I knew about them going in, they didn't really blow my mind in the tutorial. So as soon as I was done, I got to jump into story mode. The one mission I got to play takes place right after All For One defeats All Might and Bakugo comes in for the rescue. And the first thing that impressed me was actually this cutscene. Now, you may be watching it and thinking it doesn't look like much, but this animation, it might be replacing slideshows entirely. It doesn't replace the CG cutscenes, which are still in the game, and you're gonna see one very, very soon. But doing this style of animation in place of the usual anime game slideshows, it's so clever, and I would love to see it adopted across the entire anime gaming space. Imagine that instead of slideshows, you get this style every time. It looks so much better, and given how big this story is, I am totally down to play the whole story mode like this. And then we jump into the boss fight itself. We are using Bakugo here, who is a returning character from One's Justice 2, and outside of the tutorial, this is my first gameplay with All's Justice. And I gotta say, in this 1v1 against All For One, the game is feeling pretty familiar if you've played the previous ones, but they have changed a couple of Bakugo's quirks, so the routes are very different. Now, I immediately noticed a couple of things that are exclusive to story mode. First of all For One seems to be permanently armored. This is something that's very easy to overcome. You just gotta hit him with an unblockable attack and the armor is gone for the whole combo. But this is a gimmick that I'm not a big fan of when anime games do it. It feels like a cheap way to artificially make the fight tougher. Instead of making the AI smarter, you just give them armor and have them power through your attacks. I get using it here and there when it makes sense because of what the show did. For instance, if you're going up against the first Nomu that invaded UA High School, that dude was so beefy that yeah, give him super armor, make him feel that threatening. But I feel like this game just does that a little bit too much because we're actually going to see it a lot in the next game mode too, and that makes me a little bit worried. Another thing I noticed was All For One himself, because this is not a character that you can select directly. You can become this form of All For One by using the Rising of All For One Young version, but this is a limited time state, so I love it when story modes just take these types of liberties. Otherwise, a story mode is just a glorified series of versus battles, and that doesn't seem to be the case here. Now, armor aside, this boss was actually pretty challenging. It was getting down to the wire, super close, but I managed to clutch it out at the end, and that's when the game hits us with this full CG cutscene. I don't know how many of these they've done for story mode, but I can't wait to find out. I left this mode incredibly impressed. I was being cautious because even One's Justice 2 has shown a lot of cinematic stuff in their trailers, and then it was mostly slideshows during the game. But here, so far, I have seen nothing but hype. How good the full story is gonna have to wait for the final game review, because now it was time to check out the Team Up Mission mode. This is the mode where they give you a whole virtual city to explore in free roam as you do different missions. The first thing I wasn't expecting is that this mode is actually menu based. From the trailers, I thought this would have a more traditional open world structure, but no, you gotta select your team and then selecting the mission you want to do. So it's less like an open world game and more like small stories played in a big sandbox. That said, once you jump in, it does have a few open world tropes. There are collectibles, there are side missions, and there are a few buildings, but as far as I know, all the buildings do is heal you, because in this mode you will be fighting a lot and your health carries over from one battle to the next. So it's good to take a break, find a building, and the heal is pretty much instantaneous. I got to play 2 missions. One of them I completed and the other one was about finding all Class 1A members. So instead of trying to finish that, I thought it was a good chance to see what all of their movement abilities are in this sandbox, because every character has a different way to move around. Not everyone has an ability related to movement though. Some will give you locations of collectibles or side missions on the map. Others give you buffs for combat, but every character has something unique for sure. And this is important because before you select the mission, you get to select which team you want to bring with you. You're always going to play as Deku, but you can select the 2 other characters. This has to be done before joining the mission. After you select which mission you want to do, you are kind of locked into that team. And because I didn't change it before joining this first mission, I just ended up with probably the same team as everyone else that played this demo. I'm not upset though, because Tokoyami is just straight up the best. Dude just zooms wherever he wants to. Now, going into this game mode, I thought this was going to be my favorite in the whole game. After playing it though, I think it's just okay. The open world movement isn't satisfying enough to simply be there and explore the world, nor is the world interesting enough to be explored, so it ends up being something that simply exists to take you from point A to B. And when it comes to combat, I feel like they relied a lot on super armored enemies, as I previously mentioned. Except this time, the armor doesn't even go away if you hit the enemies with an unblockable, you gotta hit them with a whole plus ultra move. Now don't get me wrong, this mode has a lot of fun gimmicks to combat that make it very different from story mode or versus battles. First of all, this is a mode where you get to fight against multiple enemies, and even the lowest thugs have some fun gimmicks. You put all of those gimmicks together and you gotta be smart about who you target first and how you move around the stage. Sometimes they have you fighting against multiple characters that you can select in the roster. So it's not just fighting against a bunch of thugs, it's actually fighting against multiple enemies with a full moveset. Plus, the fights may come with other unique fun gimmicks. For instance, in the mission where you find and train with all Class 1A students, their fights came with restrictions related to their quirks. Tsuyu can go invisible, so I had to fight without seeing the HUD. Ida is fast, so we had to fight without dashing. Kirishima is manly, so we had to fight without blocking or dodging. And I love when games do these gimmicks to break up the monotony of battle. I just wish they didn't rely on armor so much to make things harder and instead focused on making the AI smarter. This mode isn't just about battles though, there's a decent amount of platforming and racing challenges too. There's a mission where you gotta make your way through this alley of obstacles while chasing Aizawa that I found pretty challenging. That was a cool one. Then we catch him and we have to fight him with our quirks disabled, which is a cool gimmick already, meaning there was no need to also give him super armor, but I guess we're doing this every time. And on top of that, each mission is fully voice acted and it comes with its own mini story. This is actually the game mode that I'm gonna do a deep dive of in tomorrow's video, so if you want to see an extended cut of both of these missions, don't forget to subscribe and come back to the channel tomorrow. Or you can watch it right now if you hit that join button. That said, despite being slightly disappointed with the armor gimmick and how basic the exploration is in this mode, I don't think by any means that this is a bad game mode at all. Especially if you think of it as something they're doing on top of what seems to be a pretty beefy story mode already. I just thought this would be the main attraction, but now it doesn't really feel that way anymore. On the other hand, I was pleasantly surprised by the Hero's Diary. This is one of the modes you unlock after you beat the previous mode, the team up battle, where you get to pick one of your classmates and just have a nice day out with them. I thought this would mostly be a bunch of dialogue scenes at a cafe, kind of a visual novel style, but turns out there's some dialogue, but there are also some gameplay challenges on each character. I got to see 3 characters. Minata's challenge was a race climbing a building. Kirishima was 2 battles, one against Tetsu and another one against both Fat Gum and Sun Eater at the same time. And then Ashiro was about finding some lost cats and and then fighting against a Nomu. My one pet peeve is that none of these were particularly challenging. This is a mode that is unlocked after beating team-up missions, and I just praise the difficulty in that Aizawa chasing section. Anyone that cleared that is gonna find this Mineta challenge boring. As far as the stories go, I think they do a good job of capturing and exploring each personality, but also 2 of the stories were about cats, so that's the level of filler we're talking here. Maybe some of the other characters have some more exciting challenges. I wasn't expecting much out of this game mode, but I left this event really curious to see more. And for the rest of this preview, they let me play as many matches against the CPU as I could before my time ran out. So I'll use this section to talk about what I thought of the combat system itself, the characters, and what I think the online is gonna look like. Obviously, these are all very early impressions, and my experience is only against the CPU, but I do have a lot of experience in both One's Justice games, as well as Arena Fighters as a whole. And this will mostly be aimed at players looking to play ranked matches online, or even competitively in tournaments. Because if your goal is to just go online, play against some friends, mash some buttons, and get destroyed, the game does have simple control schemes that allow you to do full combos with only one button. But for every single one of my matches against the CPU on max difficulty, I made sure the controls were manual for every character. And I gotta say, I felt overwhelmed by the amount of options and things I could do with each one. Even with the most straightforward characters, this is not a game that you can just go in the character select, pick your favorite hero, and immediately know how to play them. All of these characters are going to need practice, they're going to need lap time, even the ones you have played in previous games. And a lot of it is because of the rising system. Risings are so unique for each character that you actually need to stop and read descriptions if you want to know what they do. It is never a universal thing. It's never just a full screen effect or a simple character effect. That might be a part of it, but it's not everything. Sometimes there's a full list of moves for quirks that change or straight up new quirks that you only get once you activate Rising. And everyone also gets a new movement option called the Rising Action that I haven't even started exploring. Risings are full character transformations in some cases. Sometimes you see that transformation visually, but others, even if the model doesn't change, the gameplay changes so drastically, it feels like you're playing someone else. And it's gonna take you multiple games with the same character to finally figure out what you're supposed to do and get comfortable with the system. Now, if you just heard that and you're feeling like this is a very scary game to get into, I get it, but to me, it's a dream come true. We are talking about a game with 68 characters at launch, all with unique attacking moves, all with unique quirks, all with unique risings. There's very little copy-paste between the different characters, and they all feel like they have crazy, powerful gimmicks. I think that's something that gives this game a lot of longevity. For weeks, if not months after launch, this is gonna be a knowledge check type game. Someone's gonna hit you with something so wild, you're not gonna know how to play against it because you've never seen it before. You're gonna think it's broken and overpowered, and as soon as you start using it or as soon as you learn how to deal with it, you're gonna get hit by something else. And the reason why I think that's a lot of fun is because that also means that there's a lot here in this game for you to discover and do to your opponent. And this is all before we even dive into the tag system, because the tag system also feels incredible. You can tag for so many reasons, for combo extensions, for simply managing your health, but even defensively, you can tag while blocking. You can also, for instance, apply pressure by throwing a big move, tagging and moving behind that attack with another character, because the first character will always finish their move before going away. There's just a lot you can do with this tag system. It feels incredible right now, and this is only the beginning. And I think because of how much you can do in this game already, they had to remove a few systems that were present in the previous games. I've talked about the double jump already, but there's no dash canceling anymore, because you got so many ways to extend combos. That would honestly be a little too much. Combos would last forever with dash canceling. But it also doesn't seem to be any more wall fighting anymore, or at least not as much as before. It was hard for me to confirm that it's completely gone, but I also think wall fighting was always a bit janky in previous games, so I like this change a lot. They also removed a lot of the more gimmicky stages, so the stage selection is actually a lot smaller this time around, but I think it's more solid than before. That's not to say they are all just plain arenas. Camino Ward, for instance, has this huge indestructible tilted building right in the middle of it. The Gunga Mountains have different ground levels and loads of rock obstacles, and these are definitely going to be annoying to play against certain players in ranked matches, because you know they're going to hide behind a rock and throw tracking projectiles. But I feel like they removed stages that just had a lot of destructible objects that caused more glitches and visual noise than anything else. And yes, they also removed Plus Ultra 2s, the more cinematic Plus Ultras, but this is still gonna be a very high damage game. I'm mostly just getting stray hits here and there and dropping a lot of combos as I'm exploring these characters. And I'll be posting these matches in full throughout this week, so you'll get to see more of this. But when we start practicing our combos, I mean, look at the damage Muscular is dealing here. And I could have still used tag and plus ultras with different characters, because you can do plus ultra after plus ultra after plus ultra. You can throw 3 of them in a row, if you have the meter, of course. I would not be surprised if there are a ton of TODs in this game. So I genuinely do not think this game also needed plus ultra 2s. I understand the fan service side of it, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend like those were some very hype animations, because those were never at the level of like a CyberConnect 2 or an Arc System Works. It was a mid animation at best. And I think if the combat system doesn't need it, then it's a good thing they're gone. But that's just my take on it. It's also a game where if you block an attack, you will still take a ton of chip damage. So overall, it feels like it's going to be a very fast-paced game, and characters are going to drop quickly one after another. I also noticed how strong zoning feels in this game. If your character has fast projectiles, I feel like they may actually just rule. Not only because there doesn't seem to be any universal way to deal with projectiles other than just using very good movement, but also, thanks to the tag system, you can shoot a projectile and confirm into a full combo by tagging your next teammate. They will show up at the enemy's location and extend that combo for you. So the amount of damage you can get from a stray projectile hit is now higher than ever before. Once again, these are all very early impressions, but I definitely left this session super optimistic about this game. I think the gameplay feels better than ever before, and there's a lot to explore. That alone is going to keep this game alive for months. On top of that, I was surprised by how cool the story mode seems. The only thing that disappointed me was team up mission, but even then, it wasn't like my hopes were crushed or anything. I still think it's a very cool game mode. I just thought it would be the best thing in the game, and now I think story mode might actually take the cake as the best single player mode. There's still Archive Battle where we play battles from previous seasons. I didn't get to try that, but content-wise, this game is super rich, even if you don't care about the online side of things. But if you do care about the online side of things, then this seems like one of the best packages anime games have seen in a long time. That said, if you want a full review of the game, that's gonna have to wait until we're closer to release. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. The game's coming out on February 6th, and I'll be sure to update you with my full thoughts once we get closer to that day. That's gonna do it for today, however, but we got a lot more All's Justice coming out this week. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.